intersectionalities that you have with your government system as a professor. But one of the things that we have here, this is an international conference of business, is to demonstrate and show to you how here in New York, right, primarily here in New York, how then do we use tax levy dollars in a way that minority groups and other groups can benefit from it because they pay taxes, they contribute to the base as well. I'll give you a context. In 2002 to 2004, the New York City budget, the budget for the 5 boroughs, right, the operating budget was about $90 billion. So listen to the numbers. Of that 90 billion, $14 billion were spent in procurement, purchasing cars, police, fire truck, right? Anything, books, pencils, 14 billion. Of that 14 billion, 0.5 went to Blacks, Latino, Asian, women, right? Significant. This is it. This is a city of 8.5 million people, where minorities peoples represent a large percentage of the city, spend money, purchase homes. But again, look at the numbers. The city of New York was spending $14 billion in purchasing goods, right? So these inequities, these discrepancies came about, and folks organized to challenge the government, to say that there must be a better partnership and an alignment in terms of where government utilize their spending. There's no excuse, we call it, that if you are building a building like this for $200 million, and that you cannot say that you cannot find an architect, right, that is Black, Latino, Asian, or woman that can do the job, or subcontract to do the job. So what you're about to hear and see, I don't know if it works that way in the places that you are from, but I hope that you will learn from it and able to utilize how we build economic power. How is economic power built? And I'm talking about the city. I'm not even talking about the state. The state budget is over $220 billion, right? The state budget of New Jersey alone is about $34 billion. I'm talking about the 5 boroughs, the budget now is $101 billion. And with that, I believe that Greg and Suzanne would take more, maybe 16 or 17 billion dollars were spent in procurement. Now we have goals where minority contractors are able to bid successfully on contracts and do well. I'm about to introduce you to the School Construction Authority with 2 of the geniuses who have done this. And I gotta say, Dr. Data here, right? I think we have the #1 firms that do companies with millions of dollars that do well are the Indians from India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. They make the most money in government contracts here, more than the Blacks and more than the Latinos, right? Because a lot of them come as engineers, architects already from India, from Pakistan, from Bangladesh. So they come into this program and they say, oh my gosh, I hope you're a minority. You say you're minority after you leave, because they say, Suzanne, look at my color, I'm minority, I'm one, get me in. And they get into the program as minorities and they do very well on there. So a contract, you're going to see here millions of dollars that you've never seen before. I guarantee you that in a government program that were put together by 2 of these individuals. Let me just introduce a little bit the first speaker. I'll introduce the Vice President and the Chief Diversity Officer, Ms. Suzane Veira first. And she's decided to leave everything for Greg. So Suzanne, you can stand. This is Suzane Veira. Suzane Veira is the Vice President and Chief Diversity Officer of the New York City Construction Authority. She's responsible for delivering innovative solutions to increase, right, the contract opportunities, you see the word, contract opportunities for who? Minorities, women, and local business enterprise, NWLBE. In this capacity, she oversees the business, right, of the School Construction Authority. She is also key instrumental in managing the millions of dollars in the programs. Suzane is known nationally. She's recognized the program as duplicated by many agencies and authorities throughout New York City and throughout the state. Suzane expertise, that's what I wanted to highlight, and experience in this industry are recognized across the New York City government. She's constantly called upon to advise and assist other agencies, right, and other authorities in the development of the MWBE program. That's who she is. This is what she brings to this table. Then Glasgow, Greg will be coming up and he's going to be doing the PowerPoint presentation. Greg is in charge, Greg is currently the senior, right, director for business operations of the New York City Construction Authority. Greg has extensive background. I won't go heavily into details of it, but the SCA is charged with building and renovating all, I repeat the word, all school buildings utilized by the New York City Department of Education. The Business Development Division, BDD, is responsible for implementing, monitoring MWBE participation program. Let me give you a little bit more context. New York City is the largest public school system in the country. 1.1 million students, 90,000 teachers, 1,800 buildings, 1,800 just in this city. Okay, just picture that in context. New York City is so complex. The city of Boston has maybe 580,000 people in the city of Boston. We have 650,000 people in our public housing alone. So to manage public housing, we manage as a city. I want to put that into context. This is why if you do it here, you can do it anywhere. When Suzane and Greg and folks like us leave out of here, we're often called on by all cities and countries because of what we do. So pay attention to this workshop. You may want to try it somewhere else. You may want to write a paper on it and take it back to your place of academia and maybe, just maybe, encourage the government to really get on board on this program. So this is a fascinating program that has brought up, we're talking about businesses, small business, small contractors that never had an opportunity to do business. They provide mentoring program, they provide the bond program for them, they teach them credit line and put them on their feet now that they can go out there and compete successfully, right? There's no other program like this that operates this way this does. It creates millions and millions of opportunities. I call it million because those millions turn into opportunities that they can leave and go on and do so much more. But we understand that everybody comes in the program differently. So this is an opportunity for small businesses to grow, right? We talk about this International Business Conference, Dr. V, how we grow business, right? And I see that the Simon Best in the back. The best, you're going to enjoy this, Professor Best, this presentation, when you see the numbers, when you see how they're able to utilize that and make millionaires, right? Or successful business people from a blue collar trade person who may be a plumber or even a white collar who's an architect and an engineer. Without any further ado, Greg Glasgow, please come on up.
It's possible to share the PowerPoint with our emails. I can use it as
Yes.
studies with the
Oh, yes, Dr. Dadwood, so certainly.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone.
As Greg indicated, my name is Gregory Glasgow. I'm the Director of Operations in the Business Development Division. And I'm going to give you an overview of the School Construction Authority and the Business Development Division and what we do to make sure that the economic development that is spurred and coming out of the money that is spent by the School Construction Authority to build and rebuild the buildings in New York City are in some ways equitably distributed. Because as Greg said, the money that we spend in building and rebuilding the schools come from the tax dollars of all the people of the city of New York. And we want the benefits from those tax dollars to be equitably distributed, because this is a way of creating workforce and new businesses to help the city grow. Now, the history of the School Construction Authority: in the mid-1980s, many of the New York City public school buildings were rapidly deteriorating, with half the buildings constructed prior to 1949. Issues were endemic. 1/3 were in dire need of repair. 2/3 had leaky roofs. 40% had uneven flooring, and many showed signs of structural weakening. Additional issues were found inside the buildings. Nearly a quarter of the city's halls were libraries, and majority of the school's interiors were marked with wrinkled and loose ceilings. So again, at that point in the city's development, the buildings were in dire repair, and the city elders decided they needed to do something to figure out how to rebuild the schools. Because at that time, the Department of Education, which was in charge of the education, was also in charge of the building and rebuilding of the schools. And the city elders decided that it could not do both jobs at the same time. So a new school and a new organization was created. The legislation to form the School Construction Authority was signed on December 16, 1988 by Governor Mario Cuomo. The SCA was established as a public benefit corporation tasked with managing the acquisition, design, and construction of New York City schools and rehabilitating its existing educational infrastructure. And when we talk about a public benefit corporation, that is the same type of corporation that is formed to take title to property to do major development in New York City and New York State. As you see, if you go into downtown Brooklyn and you see the Barclays Center and the housing development that you see down there now, that was formed because a public benefit corporation was formed by the state to take title to that property so that the state could then redevelop that property. The same type of organization, a public benefit corporation, was formed to help in the redevelopment of the Times Square area that you now see today. So this is one of the instruments that the US government and New York State government utilizes when they're looking at big developments. Right now, they're also talking about a public benefit corporation doing the redevelopment around Penn Station. So you're looking at that particular area where they're talking about redeveloping new high rises and redeveloping Penn Station. So a public benefit corporation has empowered to make the schools more efficient, economic, quality process, and help the schools to renovate. And next, the overall mission of the School Construction Authority is to design and construct attractive and environmentally sound public schools for children throughout the many communities of New York City. And we're dedicated to building and modernizing schools in a responsible, cost-efficient manner while achieving the highest standards of excellence, safety, quality, and integrity. Over the last 35 years, the SCA has constructed an unprecedented number of additions and created 270,000 seats to accommodate the ever-growing population of New York City. When you look around New York City, we're always constantly looking at where's the population growing? Where do we need to put in new schools? So we're constantly looking to acquire new space. And one of the programs that we put into place is also a universal pre-K program. Under the Universal Pre-Kindergarten Program, we opened the nation's largest UPK program, providing nearly 8,800 seats. Concerned about our environment, the SCA made sustainable design and construction our new standard and worked to replace outdated boilers, lighting, with new, safer, energy-efficient equipment. One of the things that the SCA is currently doing right now is replacing all of the oil-burning boilers in the New York City schools. So that again, this is a process that when we talk about there are over 1,800 school buildings in New York City, it takes time. And when we talk about replacing a boiler, you're talking about boilers that cost between $8, $10, $12 million, depending on the size of the school. So it's an enormous task that we engage in. Our agency implemented a diversity program that redefined the approach to minority participation at the SBA and serves as a model for the city agencies. Throughout all of this, the SBA continued major repairs and upgraded to more than 1,800 public school buildings, over 1,400 school buildings, through more than 12,000 capital improvement projects. And as I talk about it, we'll go into the different types of projects. Because as you see, this is the capital plan. So the way the agency is funded every year out of the city and state put money together for a 5-year capital plan. So that again, that the agency can look at what needs to be done. We have what we call our BCAS contract, our Building Conditions Assessment Survey, where every year we have companies that go around and assess the conditions of all of the school buildings in New York City to determine what work needs to be done. We're about to go out with those 2 contracts. The value of those 2 contracts for 2 groups to do that assessment will be $75 million, 2 contracts. So that again, imagine the teams of engineers, architects that have to go around to assess the buildings. Now, we've also gotten to the point where they're now using drones, that when they want to look at some of the roofs, they can do it quickly and easily using a drone to fly over the roof and do assessments that way. But still, again, it takes the human's ability to go into the school and look at what is actually the conditions in the school. So we have 2 large teams that go and do this work. They have 5-year contracts that each year they survey a certain number of buildings to look at and report back. And then based on those surveys and assessments, we determine what work needs to be done and gets designed out for the following year. And keep in mind that this is a process, because even when we identify what work needs to be done, then that work has to be turned over to the architects and engineers to design the work that has to be fixed up. And then those contracts have to be bid out. And then the work has to be done before we actually get to fixing what needs to be done. As you see in our capital plan that is $19.4 billion, we have $7.95 billion for capacity, $7.94 for capital improvements, and $3.7 million for mandated programs. Now, when we talk about capacity, that is building new seats, building new buildings from the ground up. So that again, if we go into an area and the assessment has said this is an area in Queens where the population is growing and we need a new school, we will acquire property or add an addition to a new school to accomplish that. Because remember also that the New York State Legislature also mandates that classroom size has to be at 20, 23, 24 persons per classroom. So that if it's a crowded area, we need to create new classroom space for that particular area. And our capital investment, again, that is where we're doing major renovations. Because again, as I said earlier, most of the buildings were built before 1949. We're now in 2023. If we want to have a modern science lab, computer labs, educate our students in STEM, they need modern equipment. So we've got to upgrade the electrical, the computer Wi-Fi to bring that up to date. So we're constantly updating and renovating the libraries, the gymnasiums, all of the space, the cafeterias that the students use just to have lunch. And then we have mandated programs. Again, one of the things that we now have is a mandated program. If you heard the news recently, where the mayor and the head of the Department of Education, we're now going to lock all the school buildings the front of the buildings, because again, previously the buildings were open and there was school safety there, but now we will have locks on the doors where everyone will have to be buzzed in. In order to do that, you have to retrofit all of those schools to put in the buzzers and the wiring for the cameras. So that's a mandated program that now will be taking place all across the city. Now, again, as I talked about again, we talked about some of the different pieces of our capital plan. You know, we have 7.9 billion for our capital, for our capacity. We're also looking at $750 million to make all the school buildings accessible. In this day and age, we have to have buildings accessible to everyone. So you need to put in more ramps and elevators, just as we're trying to do that with the subways. We're also looking at technology and infrastructure. We have to bring the technology in so that the students can learn. So that students next year, when you have this conference, maybe some of our students will be listening to this from their classroom. And then the last one, 370 million for TCUs. We've had temporary classroom units spread out around the city to handle the overflow of students. So again, our objective was never to make them permanent. So we're moving to remove them and build new space so that all the students have good, clean space to work in. And these are a quick couple pictures that we have of different projects, and this is PS 96, where we created 145 new seats, and this building will be open next year. Now, I want to talk about the business program, because again, one of the things that we talk about and we do, Suzane and I run the business development division or business development department at the SCA. And we are charged with making sure that minority, women, and locally based enterprises benefit from the opportunities, the business opportunities that are created through the work of the SCA. So that one of the key areas we have is what we call our mentor program, because we're focused on, one, developing minority, women, and locally based enterprises to take advantage of the work. But this is what I like to tell them is the small pool of the work. Because again, in the mentor program, last year, fiscal year, we bid out $100 million in contracts for our mentor program. This year, we're projected to bid out, and our fiscal year ends on June 30th. Our fiscal year, we're projected to bid out $140 million, which is a high for us to get to that level. But what I tell the contractors in the minority and women business program, this is the small pool, because the agency on a yearly basis bids out $2, $3, $4 billion worth of work. So our objective is to develop businesses who can eventually go into the big pool. And when I go through the program, you'll see the big pool are bidding on contracts above $3 million. Now, as you go back to your homes, your contracts may not be that large, but you can create an area where everyone will have the opportunity to bid. So, and create businesses that will also create workforce for people of your country. Now, again, the mentor program, right now we have 130 firms in our mentor program. And the way we do it, everyone gets an opportunity to bid, and roughly 87% of those firms have won contracts. And again, we talk about the type of work that they bid on. Out of the 216 packages that they bid on, we've had accessibility projects, auditorium upgrades, boiler heating plants, building envelopes, library upgrades, gymnasium upgrades, playground upgrades. So science labs. So it's a full variety of projects. If you look at, here you are in Medgar Evers College, a school just like any other school. So we've done the same thing, creating auditoriums where the students can meet and discuss issues. Now, for our projections to show you some of the work that we've done for prime contractors, in FY 20 to 23, our participation of minority, women, and locally based businesses, because our program operates on two levels. One In all of our contractual activity at the SCA, we encourage minority and women businesses to bid as primes. So that means on projects above $3 million, it's open market. It's open to everyone bidding. In the mentor program, you have to be a MWLBE firm. You have to be certified as a minority, woman, or locally based enterprise. But we also encourage for those architectural contracts that are open to anyone, any firm bidding. We encourage MWBE firms to bid on all of the prime activity at the organization. And in our current 5-year capital plan, the SCA obligated over $2 billion, 27% of its total prime contracts were won by MWLBE firms, over $300 million through the mentor program. So again, we're talking about MWLBE firms bidding in the mentor program and those bidding in our larger program against all bidders. But we also have our mentor program. And this is where we were talking about again, where you can see we look at the ethnic breakdown of who is participating in the program. So again, in FY 20 and 23, the SCA obligated over $304 million through its mentor program. And again, from the statistics, you can see the different groups that have benefited from the mentor program. As the Asian Indian firms have won $152 million worth of contracts, and Black firms have won $101 million. Hispanic firms, $29 million. And these are contracts that are big. Nothing is awarded. Contracts are awarded to the lowest responsible bidder, so that everyone is competing on an equal playing field. It's just in the mentor program, you have minority, women, and locally based enterprises that are bidding against each other. When you go to the capital improvement program, they're bidding against everyone. So you see that the participation, we're trying to engender the businesses. And as I go through further into the presentation, we'll talk about the training and technical assistance that we provide those firms to grow. Because a mentor program is a 4-year program. It's a capital commitment from the firms to grow. Because again, the construction industry is not an easy business. And in order to grow, you have to have many pieces together. In addition to the technical skills, you have to have the back office to make sure that you get paid. And you have to have a good, tight number when you're bidding on an open market.
Greg, sorry, before you go to, I just want to put in context earlier. There is nowhere, any other government industry program in this city, right? None. Where Blacks, Asian, Pacific Asian, Indian might not get this type of pool money. Guaranteed. This is the only place they can play and have that amount of money for them to compete with. Nobody else, they're not competing. Out of those $2 billion, that's what they are able to get because these programs are what they created that. No other agency has this, right?
Yeah, wonderful.
Right. All of my friends in there living well. Pakistan, from India, whatsoever. Today, this is a wonderful program. I say yes, right? How it came about. So that's why I want you guys to know, because maybe your government, as Greg says, when you go back, may be able to do that because schools have to be built. Why not let the community, why not let local contractors learn and be part of the system that they can benefit from it? So I just want you to look at those numbers. Those are not fudge numbers. Those are real numbers, are payoffs, right, Greg? Those contracts that are awarded. Sorry, good.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
As Greg said, those are actual, because we have to do the work.
Yep.
And then here's another piece of the program that we have at the School Construction Authority. We do have the mentor program, which is only for minority, women, and locally based enterprises. But on all of those projects that are above $3 million, the SCA has an MWLBE goal on all of the subcontracts. The agency has a 30% MWLBE goal, which is what the goal is for New York City for minority, women, and locally based enterprises to participate on subcontracts at the SCA. So in the current 5-year capital plan, MWLBE firms have been awarded $1.15 billion, or 35% in subcontracts on SCA work of which over 365 million, 32% have been in emergency work. So let me talk about that a little bit. So that again, when you're talking about subcontracts, if you were building this building, you would have one general contractor. Now that general contractor may not do all of the work with his or her own forces. So they may get a subcontractor who's going to provide the structural steel. There may be another subcontractor who's doing the brickwork. You will get someone else who will do the painting, so that all of those are considered subcontracts. And in the SCA's business procedures, 30% of all of those subcontracts on a project are targeted to go to minority, women, and locally based enterprises. In the business development department, I have 3 other staff persons, 4 staff persons that are monitoring all of those projects in the 5 boroughs of New York City, so that when we award a contract for a new school, once they submit, they have to submit a plan to us. They have to submit a plan to us to say, okay, these are the contracts I'm not going to do with my own forces, and I'm going to hire subcontractors to. And we want them to identify 30% of those contracts for minority and women businesses. We have minority, women, and locally based enterprises that are certified with the School Construction Authority. We've got over 8,000 businesses that are certified by New York City Small Business Services. So in the city of New York, you can always find a minority, woman, or locally based enterprise that can provide you with the services. So it's not about being able to find tradespeople who can do the work. One of the things I always remember is I used to work for the state, and when we started doing the Times Square renovation, if you watch television, late night television, the David Letterman Theater was being developed, and Disney was doing their theater. And these were landmark theaters. And they said, oh, well, we wanted to do our Disney MWBE program, even though New York State was lending them $30 million at like 2% interest rate. They said, no, you're going to do the New York State MWBE program, but it's a landmark theater. Well, in New York City, they had just recently done the David Letterman Theater, where CBS does their late night show, which is also a landmark theater. And we said to them, hey, in New York City, you can always find quality minority women contractors to do work on any type of theater, even a landmark theater. So that again, you can't use that as an excuse anymore. And again, as we always say, that the benefits from these projects have to be equitably distributed among all of the communities of New York City. So that again, having a MWBE subcontractor program just makes sure that wherever you're building, that community feels they are getting some benefit from it. Because again, if you're building a school in Crown Heights here, and you know there are contractors who are Black, Hispanic, they know, oh, there's some contractors from Brooklyn, from the community. If we're building a school in Queens, there are Asian Indian contractors who are doing work. So that the community feels they're also being benefited, and the workforce, because it's clear to us that firms hire people that look like them. That's just the reality in life. So that again, if I hire an Asian Indian contractor, he's hiring Asian Indian workers. If I hire a Black contractor, he's hiring Black contractors. You're creating workforce for the city, and it's really what we talk about, the real trickle-down economics. Because when people have jobs, they go back to their community and spend the money in their communities. So the next slide shows our MWLBE utilization plan for prime contractors. And this is currently right now. So you'll see that we look at it from 2 ways. We look at it on dollar value and as a percentage of the number of contracts. So right now, and we break it out into several different areas. We're looking at all of the contracts that the School Construction Authority lets out. So again, as you see from our professional service contracts, you know, we have A&E contracts, we have our construction management contracts, where, you know, we're always looking to achieve our 30% goal. We're not doing it there yet, but we're in the process of trying to create a design opportunity partnership program to increase the number of minority architects who are working with the SDA to design the buildings that we build, because we feel it's something that we would like to see, so that when we develop a new school, the kids in that school can see, hey, the people who designed this building look like me. Okay, and then as we see again on the prime contracts, you see our construction line, which is the line of the new buildings that we're building from the ground up, and CIP. And these numbers reflect this year, currently right now. You also see our mentor program. So that's why you see 99% of the contracts going to MWBE, because again, in the mentor program, they are only minority, women, and locally based enterprises. And then we talk about purchasing. You know, we do get pushback from different parts of the agency because we want them all to participate in the economic development and the diversity in the spending at the agency. But overall, on a dollar value, we're still at 32.1%. So that's one of the keys for us. And then our next area, this again looks at the subcontracts, because again, as I talked about, the mentor program is the small pool. So I have to focus on what are we doing on the subcontracts on the larger projects, the $2, $3, $4 billion that the agency bids out in the course of that year. So again, as you see, our capital improvement program right now, for this particular year, we're at 56%, and our line projects 43%. And overall, right now, we're into 45%. Do I think that number will stay that high for this year? We're getting into our heavy construction season now. So a lot of contracts will be let. So that number may go down to our 35%. But at this point, the folks are pushing ahead to make sure that we're holding their feet to the fire. As the contractors know, this is what your contract says. And this is written into their contract that they have to achieve and have to make a good faith effort to achieve 30% in the subcontracting of the agency. Now, as I talked about the mentor program, this slide really shows you where the mentor program is that we're designing and we have had in place for minority, women, and locally based enterprises. Suzanne and I have been at the agency for 15 years, so it's like almost half the agency's tenure. And what we like to say is from the time that we took over running the mentor program, we've been re-engineering it. We're always trying to make it better and develop it to a place where the firms can grow. Because again, when we first started, some of the firms used to hit that glass ceiling. And now we've kind of cut some holes in that glass so that they can move forward. And as you see in the mentor program, it's a 4-year program and they're bidding on contracts up to $1 million. In the mentor program, they do not need bonding. And we will also talk about the technical assistance and support that we give them in the mentor program. Because again, in the mentor program, we've recognized over the years that one of the barriers to growth is access to capital. Okay, so in the mentor program, we have a bank set up to make loans to the contractors. Because again, when you are doing a gymnasium and you've got to order long lead items for a basketball, you know, the basket, you've got to order a science lab, you've got to order desktops and things. Not all small contractors, when they start doing work with the SCA, has the capital to order these long lead items. So we've made a bank, we work with Webster Bank, that will lend up to 30% of the capital for that project. Now, we don't just give away the loan. The way our loan program is designed, the construction manager who is supervising that work will also review the loan request and to determine that the usages are correct and the amount is correct and not excessive for the needs. And then they will put in the repayment schedule so that the loan will get paid back by the 75% mark, because a construction manager understands how often the contractor should be submitting a requisition. So this way, the payment of the loan does not get caught up in the closeout of the project. So that's the first part of our mentor program, where we have no bonding is necessary. Now, in our graduate mentor program, you're now bidding on contracts between $1 and $3 million. In that program, we require you to have bonding. But in the 4 years that you've been involved in the mentor program, we have given you training along the way and prepared you for the graduate mentor program, and I'll talk about that more in our next slide. And then in the graduate mentor program, this is where I talk about we cut a hole in the glass ceiling. Because again, when we first got there, firms would go into the graduate mentor program and they were never able to be pre-qualified or get a chance to bid in our capital improvement program. So Suzane and I negotiated with our pre-qualification department that once a firm had completed a project in the graduate mentor program, they would be pre-qualified to bid on project 150% of their largest project, which enabled them to bid on projects above the $3 million level to get their feet wet in the big pool. And now, after their tenure in the graduate mentor program, since they had bid on projects before in the capital improvement program, they were now ready to go to that full time and compete on the open market against all firms.
About 10 minutes more, Greg, so we're
Almost finished.
Yep.
Okay, so again, this is just some quick pictures of some mentor projects, a gymnasium that we've done. You know, cafeterias, kids have to eat all the time. You know, we do the basic things, putting in locker rooms in the gymnasium, putting in new lockers. Playground. More playground. And I have to just say this, throw this in there, since my daughter went to public schools, and fortunately, every time she moved to a school, it just so happened that the SCA was redoing the playgrounds in her school, so it made Daddy a hero, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay, so and again, when I talk about the construction managers, this is what we talk about our scope A. The construction managers, you know, provide the mentor firms with supervision on completing their projects. They help the firms to navigate through the SCA's various protocols and procedures. And they help the firms to understand the process of paperwork that's necessary to work with government, which is a big thing here in New York City, the paperwork of working with a government agency. And assist the firms in growing their business model. So those are the things that we try to make sure that the contractors know from this construction side. And then again, some of the technical assistance we provide in the mentor program, as I mentioned, we have our loan program. We have done over $32 million worth of loans since I've been at the agency in the last 15 years without any defaults. Because we have a team that's working closely, the CM supervising it, the banks, and we have our loan committee meeting tomorrow. Okay, and then we also help them with bonding. We have business development. We have our Opportunity Academy program, which helps them with staff to learn how to do the paperwork that's necessary to make sure you get your requisitions. You know, business development plan, so that they understand where do they want to grow. Then we have a CPA and a lawyer that's available for one-on-one technical assistance. If you have to understand how to read the document, how to manage your finances, because you're long-term. And we also try to do technology training. We want them to take advantage of technology that exists to make the business better. So, and that's basically what the school construction authority does and the business development department does to make sure that minority, women, and locally based enterprises benefit from the work of the SCA, and all of the communities in New York City benefit from the work of the Business Development Department and the School Construction Authority. So with that, I have one more slide. It's okay. We have one more slide here. And again, this shows you, again, some of the things from the SCA and how we benefit from the program. So with that, I'm finished. If there's anything else.